So we were talking at the party last night about your various ventures. You were also, before Uber, you were co-founder of StumbleUpon,
Yep.
which you sold to eBay. You're now seeding various startups. Is there a theme to your philosophy about technology? Is there a theme to your various ventures over the course of your career?
I think one common theme is I actually think more from the product perspective than the technology perspective. But it's always I'm looking for like one simple user action that I think that will do something very useful or very valuable. So I guess with StumbleUpon, you were clicking a button, it was showing you a web page, right? And then with Uber, obviously you click and a car comes. But generally just that idea of what is a product where one simple user action can do something very interesting. I think I'm always looking for that. And I feel like that's been sort of a common theme, I think, to stuff I've worked on.
So let's go back to the original idea for Uber. How much of your original deck or your plan is intact today?
Yeah, I was telling you this last night, yeah. Probably about 90% of it. I mean, I think that...
Oh, that's remarkable.
I mean, things like Pool were not part of the original vision. Things like ATC, definitely not. But I think that the general idea of kind of, multiple car types and really flexible personal transportation, I think that was really back even in 2008 from the original idea. It actually worked out pretty well. So at some point I was saying yesterday to Rebecca, I need to like actually put that deck online because I've got a deck from like November 2008, and it's actually really cool to look back and see that actually most of it worked out. So.
Now, was autonomous driving in that deck? Did you predict autonomous driving in 2008?
That's all Travis. That's all Travis.
Okay.
No, I mean definitely Travis. Things like Pool, things like ATC have all been things that Travis pretty much led the initiative on. Yeah.
So how did you divvy things up with Travis in terms of your fields of expertise?
Well, I was really involved at the very beginning. I mean, I started the company in the end of 2008, pretty much. 2009 was pretty much prototyping it. Travis started part-time. And then Travis took over. I kind of handed the keys to him in 2010. So I was very involved the first couple of years. And the last few years, I've been more of an advisor and on the board. So yeah, I he took the lead in 2010. So.
But you're still chairman, and I just have to ask, Uber's now pulled out of China. Some people...
Not pulled out of China, but
well,
different deal.
Different ownership structure with Didi in China.
Yep.
I work for the Wall Street Journal. We're always thinking about which big tech company is going to do an IPO. Does this mean that Uber could be closer?
I think Travis wants to wait a while. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon.
So no closer than before, then?
I don't think so.
And could you sketch out, maybe if autonomous driving wasn't really your idea, is this something that you think is going to play a big role in Uber's future?
I mean, I think it's pretty much inevitable. I mean, it is going to happen. There's multiple companies working on it. I feel like if the demand for on-demand services keeps growing, I mean, there's not even going to be enough drivers to fulfill that demand. So I think the combination of meeting the demand plus safety improvements, I feel like, yeah, it's pretty much inevitable. Yeah.
When you say this company could be the Uber of blank, how does that make you feel? Do you feel proud? Does it kind of annoy you? Do you feel that? I
just feel like it's usually used for things that have no connection. It's like they're saying Uber for this, and I don't even really think that. Like Uber for massages, I'm like, well, it's not really Uber for massages. I also think that like when you say Uber for, I would think, oh yeah, something you want to do multiple times per day. And if it's something that you're only going to do once every month, and it doesn't need to be a 3-minute ETA, well then I don't think Uber for really applies. So I mean, it sounds cool, but a lot of times I think it's misused. So.
Do you think it's a good idea for Uber to, I mean, Uber's going into food and to autonomous driving. Do you see a future where Uber is going to definitely get into some of those areas, perhaps not massages, but even to more things than we're thinking about now?
I mean, maybe. I think part of the API strategy is just let people use the API to come up with interesting, innovative new stuff on top of, the logistics, kind of platform. So we don't necessarily have to think of all of it ourselves. They can just use our API and get the benefit of it.
I wanted to ask about Expa, your new venture.
Yep.
Now you're trying to not really just finance startups, but you're really trying to play a more active role in the conception of what a startup can be.
Yep. Yeah. So I mean, basically, Expa is like, I think culturally we're a product design firm. Under the hood, we're a private equity firm, but we're kind of meshing those two concepts. So instead of like a traditional venture investor where you're sort of waiting for something to be created and then you invest in it, most of the things we're working on are ideas of me or one of my partners. So we've come up with about 10 so far that we're kind of working on. Some still haven't been announced. But basically, these are ideas that we really like, ideas that we're excited about. We haven't seen anything out there that that we like as much, so we want to do it when I kind of created ourselves. So the same sort of thing that motivated me with StumbleUpon or Uber, like creating a product that I personally want to use. I'm basically now working on a few things that I personally want to use but don't yet exist. So.
Are you focused really on disruption per se, or more on user interface and?
I don't really think of it like, oh, I'm going to go be disruptive. That's not really what I've ever thought. I mean, I think if you just make the product simple enough and easy enough to use, and it's valuable enough, then it will potentially be disruptive. But I never really thought of, that was never a word that I even used early on. I think the media has used that word recently, but that definitely wasn't something that we talked about at the beginning.
And when you think about the blue ocean and what's out there, are there areas of tech where if the person comes to you with the right idea, you just want to go solve that problem? Are you thinking way beyond tech to solving bigger issues?
I mean, I think it's less about the tech than just the application of the tech. I mean, right now we've got a lot of amazing technology, and there's some problems and things that I think could be solved with very simple technology that just haven't happened yet, mostly just because of either regulation or the people who typically lead in those industries are not tech people. And I think a lot of times very simple technology, if properly applied, for the right product, the right user interface, I think it could make a pretty big impact. And a lot of times I'm thinking about what are the things that like now the stars have aligned. And like with Uber in 2009, it was a combination of app store, GPS, battery life on a phone, all these different things that sort of enabled it to go together. And like even a year or two before, it wouldn't have been possible. So I think if I see something where I feel like, oh man, this is using something that just recently the synergy existed, I think that's something I get excited about.
And when you look at cars, did you have the sense with Uber that you wanted to change that industry, that you wanted to with taxis and the typical, you didn't really have that disruptive
I was just stranded on the curb in San Francisco so often that I just got sick of it. And
you just kind of got pissed off.
I tried Taxi Magic, it was okay, Cabulous wasn't very good, so I just was like, all right, we gotta make our own.
When you look at StumbleUpon was your first company, and we were talking last night about Travis and how he struggled with her first few startups. StumbleUpon was sold to eBay, but didn't turn out to be as smashing a success as Uber. What did that teach you? And maybe you could tell us the story of StumbleUpon.
Yeah, I mean, it was my very first company. I started when I was 22, 23 years old, and I really loved Google at the time because I just recently switched from I think a Hotbot or Alta Vista or whatever to using Google. When I started thinking of it, but I wanted something where I could just push a button, find something cool, something that I wasn't specifically looking for, something that was more serendipitous. So that was my very first company. I started when I was only 23, and I think I just made a lot of mistakes. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. The first few years in Canada, there was no network. It wasn't like there wasn't people blogging about entrepreneurship like there is now.
Can you explain what StumbleUpon is? It's a web discovery platform.
Yeah, it's a web discovery platform that basically would let you channel surf the web, and you would click a button. If you liked it, you click thumbs up. If you didn't, you click thumbs down. And it would learn what you like and kind of evolve over time. So kind of a personalized recommendation engine. So I really liked the idea of it, and it was, I think, pretty unique, in its day. It was kind of pre-other discovery platforms, actually, and kind of popularized the whole idea of, like button before, Facebook used it. So I think it was really interesting, but because it was my first time, because I made so many mistakes, because I didn't really know what I was doing, it kind of like, it was a decent product, but it didn't ever grow as fast as Uber did. So.
What sort of mistakes do you see other founders making? And as you're now with Expa trying to counsel them, what are the biggest? Do you see any common patterns in terms of miscalculations or?
I mean, a lot of times I just say focus on the product and user feedback, because I think sometimes people get really obsessed about the marketing and the messaging and some little nuances that honestly don't really matter that much. I mean, if people love using your product, you'll probably be able to raise money, and if you can raise money, you'll probably be able to attract talent and vice versa. So I mean, I feel like a lot of times founders get a little bit too caught up in like trying to do 10 things, and the one engineer role. Like, what is the one thing you have to do first? If if you really had to choose. I used to have spreadsheets where I'd rank stuff as high, medium, low, and like 60% of it ended up being high. And I'm like, there's no way I can do all this, right? I was doing too many things at once. And the second I started stack ranking, it got a lot better.
The tech industry is under a certain amount of scrutiny at the moment. We talk about unicorns and misvalued companies, and many wonder if we're in another bubble. Do you have concerns about that, even vis-a-vis Uber?
I don't think so. I mean, I think it's pretty reasonably valued. I think there was like money was flowing around pretty freely a couple of years ago, but now it feels like it's become a lot more rational. At least the companies I'm seeing right now that are fundraising are not getting like crazy overvalued, situations like they were like a year or two ago. So I think there's still a lot of money sitting on the sidelines and waiting for the right thing. And when something does pop out, definitely a lot of people want to get into it. but it definitely feels more rational than it did even a year or two ago.
You're from Canada.
Yep.
How many other folks in Silicon Valley are from Canada? And could you describe your education and what you think made a big impact on?
Quite a few Canadians actually end up here.
Huh.
Yeah, there's several I've talked to even yesterday. Yeah, I did electrical engineering school in Canada, and then master's in software, and then that led me to StumbleUpon. And then after probably 3-4 years in Canada working on StumbleUpon, then I came down to San Francisco, and that's the first time we ever raised money. The first time I kind of met people who thought I wasn't just a web designer, like I used to describe what StumbleUpon was, and they thought I was just a web designer, you know. And so I think when I came here and people actually got it, it was really cool to see that people were as excited about the idea as I was. And that sort of prompted me to move to San Francisco.
Yeah. And when you look at your working relationship now with Travis at Uber, is there any advice you would give in terms of, I mean, obviously he's day-to-day, you're not as much day-to-day, but many companies go through periods of transition and people pulling back. How did you guys structure it so that it stayed something that could keep moving forward?
I mean, yeah, I mean, it was a pretty kind of clean transition in sort of mid-2010. I mean, I was still running StumbleUpon full-time at the time, and I knew I couldn't really do 2 jobs. I mean, I think right now I'm the CEO of a few small companies, but they're all growth, pre-revenue, right? So it's not too hard. But when you have like 2 things that have a lot of users and are making money and you got a lot more to worry about, I didn't think I could do 2 things at once. And I've always been super interested in discovery, so that's still probably my greatest passion. So yeah, I wanted to keep doing StumbleUpon, and he was looking for his next thing after a couple years off, and yeah, the timing worked out really well.
How difficult was the decision about China? It's a good business outcome, but a little bit of a tough thing to shift on.
Yeah, it was a hard one. I mean,
strategically.
I think TK still thinks that I think he loves the idea, the challenge of it, right? And I think he, in a way, it's like, okay, that's one less kind of challenge in front of him. But I mean, he's got other challenges too. So I think I think it was probably rationally the right move. I just didn't really spend much time in China. He was there much more than I was, so I was pretty much supportive of either direction.
And does this at all change Uber's ambitions for the world, and in terms of Europe and Asia and where else you're going to go?
I don't think so. I mean, I think we're still, focusing on India, focusing on ATC, focusing on things like pool. ATC plus pool together gets really interesting because it just changes the whole dynamics of cities. So I don't think it's really any different. It's just in this particular instance, it was a deal that I thought made sense.
Well, I'd like you all to join me in thanking Garrett for a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.